customer relationship management or constituent relationship management or whatever the C stands for. We'll touch a little bit on predictive analytics and take a look at mobile and some of the ways that can be used in our industry. So one of the things that's going to go through that we ran into a little bit of a snag here, and sort of the interest of time in going through this, I'll be presenting this at ACRO on the morning of Wednesday, April 15th, and I know I'll be posting this with all the links activated, but we had an issue with the presentation as far as displaying some of the videos, and also in the interest of time, I can kind of explain some of these, but I'll move through them. It was kind of locking up our system. So going back and looking at marketing communications, viral personalized video, you can't actually, I know a lot of people want to, you can't actually just go out and create a viral video. So if you ever have somebody come up to you and just say, hey, go out and produce a viral video for me. I mean, everybody in the world would love to go out and get Gangnam Style's 2.3 billion hits in rural YouTube for several years, but you can't just do that on purpose. What you can do is sort of the concept of what do you have that you can utilize? And this is taking a look at what's happening around the internet, what's kind of trending in popular culture, what do you have on your campus that you can utilize that somebody maybe has done something really good, and the sort of concept of striking while the iron's hot. So if it's hot, you need to move fairly quickly or have some people that are engaged that can take advantage of this. What this was, and also Call Me a Duck, this was a video that was produced by our admissions office at the University of Oregon, and we had one of the folks in admissions wrote the lyrics for this song, and what we did was take a look around at Engage, kind of a hot property on campus at the time, was our men's a cappella group called On the Rocks, and they produced a cover of Lady Gaga's Bad Romance song, and that generated about 8.6 million hits on YouTube. So they said, hey, these guys are kind of popular, they did a great job, let's do something with that. So one of our folks, like I said in admissions, wrote the lyrics, went through the song with them, produced a video, and the Call Me a Duck video. So engaged the men's a cappella group and produced that video. So it's done pretty well as far as people are interested in University of Oregon, and it's had around 847,000 hits on YouTube. Another striking while the iron's hot sort of thing was BYU produced New Spice. I call it the BYU New Spice, but Study Like a Scholar. And this one, on their side, had about 4.3 million hits. And what they did was just take, if anybody recalls sort of the New Spice commercials, Old Spice, New Spice commercials, where the guy's going through and he's immediately transitioning between all these different places and scenes and everything shifting really quickly. They did a take on that, and I think did a great job at it. Pretty short video, about 55 seconds, and they had generated 3.4 million hits on YouTube. Another sample of something that's smaller, but it's more designed to be localized on generating connections with people on campus is, if anybody recognizes the Pearls of Knowledge, and that's a picture of Harvey Perlman. He's the chancellor at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And I think they did a really great social media campaign intending this, and they also did a series of short videos with Harvey. And to have your president / chancellor involved in this kind of stuff, I think is great. I think he's a fantastic straight man on just playing that kind of deadpan humor. And he has a great series of videos out there. I'll be showing some of these at ACRO and posting these. You can go out and take a look yourself. But one on location, location, location. These don't get a tremendous amount of hits because they're really just localized to campus and some people from off campus looking at them. But he just goes through this sort of deadpan look at the concept of the Cornhuskers, and everybody thinks that University of Nebraska-Lincoln is out in the cornfield because they're called the Cornhuskers. And he kind of goes through the series of, are the Oregon State Beavers located in a flooded creek? And are the Miami Hurricanes located in a tropical depression system? And then he kind of goes through the Ohio State Buckeyes. Where exactly? And then kind of just drops off like that. So I'd include this because it mentions two of my favorite OSU rivals, Oregon State and TOSU, in our recent clash in the National Football Championship game. Talking about location, location, location. Does anybody know where this is? Because I always kind of envy anybody who's on the admission side of recruiting and looking at, what else do you have to do to market except kind of walk into a room. I would just throw this up on the screen and say, would you like to come here and go to school? So if anybody doesn't recognize it, that's UC Santa Barbara, and I just think it's one of the most gorgeous looking Pacific Coast campuses. Okay, let's hit big data. So Kent Kuo, who was a registrar at Oregon State University and now is the director of enterprise computing, had this quote, linking data from disparate sources to answer questions you didn't even know how to ask. The challenge with us really in higher ed is we do have a large amount of data. It's pretty disparate. A lot of it's siloed. Some of it's hosted in different places. Some of it we have on campus. But trying to get that together, normalize that, and actually extract meaning from that, that's the tough part. Sifting through a sea of information, search of trends and truths. I like some of the defining big data and what people are taking a look at. And big data has been thrown around for a while now, and it's almost, I think, crusted out, moving past it. So I like the 8% mark here on the latest buzzword. I think in higher ed, we're going to be really looking at, we probably can't compete on the same level as the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, or even big players like Walmart, Target, etc. But what we have is probably looking at smaller, targeted, small data in a targeted, focused fashion. So just giving you a little background sort of on big data, the concepts that have been around for a long time. And everybody seems to want to have something where they focus on, let's describe what we do, and all the words have to start with a V. Or there's some things in student affairs like, okay, everything we describe has to start with an I. So I think we all fall into this, whether it's associations, institutions, different things where we're going to force everything to start with a certain letter. But volume, velocity, and variety. So volume is just how much data is out there. Velocity is how fast can you deal with and move this data. And variety is just all the different types. So this kind of gives you a snapshot look at data volume, moving in gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes. We're getting to, zettabytes and just way out there, huge amounts of data. And some of these we have up on the Columbia River. We'll have gigantic Google data centers because we've got hydroelectric power powering those. Fairly earthquake-free zone. But you look at data velocity on higher ed, a lot of times we're just so used to batch jobs running, and we've had those for decades and decades, and we still have those periodic things near real time, and then getting to data velocity where you're actually dealing with things in real time. The variety piece, as you can see, is you're looking at databases, photo, web, social, images. How do you get all this stuff, structured and unstructured data, and bring it together? Taking a look at a graph from IBM here, the other big part that impresses me with a lot of people that really run big data well, veracity. And if anybody's ever, and probably everybody in this phone call, has dealt in some way or another with a student information system, a CRM system, or anything like that, and is anybody, if somebody could throw it in the chat thing, is anybody dealing with a system that they can guarantee has no duplicates in that system? So the veracity of the data, is it correct? Or are you just going off things that are imprecise and incorrect? Because we're always fighting on many fronts a battle against duplicates and trying to ascertain if somebody is who they say they are or not. Now this gets even more impressive when you look at some of the players out there that, I'll hit Facebook here in a second, and what they can do with that. But throwing out more V's here, people look at volume, velocity, variety, variability, veracity, visualization, value, and looking at maybe what some of the more important ones are. Can you communicate that value with the data? And a lot of people get into these sort of arguments of, well, you're not really talking about the data, you're talking about how to use the data. And visualization is big now, and just trying to communicate that to people who don't really understand the data, but need to help make decisions about what to do with it. Variability is kind of huge because when people start to stare at something too long, they kind of have, especially with data, you start having a phenomenon called apophenia where they start looking and seeing patterns of the data that may not actually be there. So some of the things you're looking at with data, and the most important in my mind, are you have to have somebody who is going to interpret this well. You need to have an analyst that can understand what's going on with the data and help communicate that to the people who need to make decisions. Now, if anybody, I have this image here because hopefully that sort of simulates if anybody recalls a story that occurred with Target and a pregnancy, and it's kind of illustrative of big data. Now, what this happened was Target had a case where they had a great analyst. He did a fantastic job with Target, probably personally responsible for increasing their overall revenue by 50% from 2006 on. It was Andrew Pohl. And he really took a look at going back, studying the data that they gathered from customers, and looking at how he could use predictive analytics and look at what sort of buying habits would indicate where somebody was, say in pregnancy or getting married. Basically what they're looking for, inflection points in time where we are the most likely to change our brand allegiance and shift brand awareness. And those biggest times are when you're having a child, and someone's pregnant, having a child, getting married, sort of large life changes like that. So what he would do is he got looked at predictors, and they ended up sending out advertisements based on this. So the story that this kind of engendered was there was a father who stormed into a Target outside Minneapolis, demanded to see the manager, clutching coupons that had been mailed to his daughter, angry, wanted to know who to talk to. My daughter got this in the mail. She's still in high school. You're sending her coupons for baby clothes and cribs. Are you trying to encourage her to get pregnant? Manager didn't know what was going on. Looked at the mailer. It was addressed to the man's daughter, contained the advertisements, maternity clothes, nursing furniture, pictures of smiling infants. I apologized, and then a few days later, the father called the manager back and just said, I'm really sorry, I need to apologize, I had to talk with my daughter. Turns out there's been some activities in my house I haven't been completely aware of. She's due in August, and I owe you an apology. So what they'd been doing was looking at purchasing habits, so people doing things like buying cotton balls, buying certain sorts of unscented lotions, and all these other indicators that someone was pregnant, and then they were putting together mailers that are just-in-time mailers sent to you, explicitly designed for you. So everybody on your block, your neighborhood, isn't getting the same Target ad. You're getting the ads that pertain to your shopping habits or whatever else Target might know about you. So they decided to back off the creepy factor, and that's something you need to be aware of in all the big data, social media, everything is you want to be in touch with things, you want to be in touch with people, you want to personalize things, but you don't want to go so far that you cross the fence into the creepy side. You kind of have to back off and say, I know you, I kind of respect things, I want to make things easier for you, but I don't want to intrude too much into your personal life. So now they will continue to do this, but they'll mix in a coupon for diapers and formula and everything next to some things for lawnmowers and patio furniture and just kind of blend it all together, but it's still there for you to absorb. So that kind of goes on with what other things are happening there. Amazon to Facebook. I like this example that, and this happened with Sue Eveland, our registrar. It's just a kind of anecdotal thing, but how quickly they can move between things. So you're on Amazon, you're ordering something like products for your backyard composting. And then you just 10 minutes later on Facebook, and all of a sudden you're getting targeted with ads in the sidebar for charcoal filters for composting and all this sorts of thing. And this stuff is not by accident. And that's what's mind-blowing is they're tracking you, keeping track of where you are, what's going on, and hopping between these different areas. You're still you. You're still that you that was over there shopping and ordering those sorts of things and looking at putting those things in front of you to see if you have the aha moment, like, oh, Jesus, yeah, I forgot to order those. So let me just click on that stuff and continue that purchase cycle. So when I say Big Brother is here and he is us, I mean, there's all sorts of things that are happening from video cameras in stores to geolocation, geofencing when you cross a border that are going to pick up on your Wi-Fi signals, that are going to start marking you, sort of a laser tracking thing with video that you can move through, and at certain points you can be anonymous, but it's going to tell if you're a male, female, if you're a child, if you're an adult. Picking up that data, how you engage with products, where you stop in the store, how you move through the store, and then when you check out, if you use a credit card or some sort of affiliation card or phone number, etc., to get a discount on something, then it can pair that up with, oh, that's Jim Bouse, That's the person we were watching through there. Those are the kind of shopping habits. That's how he moves through our store. And this was a short video I had from New York Times, clip out of there. Retail Next is a company that, one of these that does this sort of thing, where you will track how people move through stores, highlight them, and that also it can blend in. But a lot of these things are used, maybe like American Apparel and different store chains. Big players will have their own systems they've developed, but you also have things like just a local coffee shop can do this by monitoring Wi-Fi signals. They provide free Wi-Fi. They can track then, maybe not explicit your name, but they know your signal. They know when you've checked in, how often you go to the store, your patterns, all that kind of stuff to help market things towards you and design their open hours, design their products around what your experience is and how to maximize that and then their profits. So I'd say free internet, and we aren't the customer, we're the product. And that's pretty much true of most things that are quote-unquote free. And this is one of the things I thought, an interesting thing, I'll just put a side note in here really quickly to probably go out. If you haven't never checked out a TED Talk on basically on filter bubbles by Eli Pariser, pretty popular, and it's just a unique thing of looking at what you're doing on the internet is really couched by the sort of activities you have, friends you see, information that you see is all personalized towards you. So more and more you're falling inside this filter bubble and not experiencing things sort of outside your realm of comfort. Okay, let's move to social media. I had a nice thing here, on a little video on Harvey Perlman again, called The Insider. Now, what they did in their sort of second round of short snippet videos is they went out, and this is something all of us can do, is take a look at who are sort of famous, semi-famous alumni or people who have attended your institution. And they went out and did this. And a couple people that got to engage in a couple of these videos were Warren Buffett, and this one was an insider on social media things. It was pretty funny that Ev Williams, who co-founded Twitter with Biz Stone, attended the University of Nebraska-Lincoln for 2 years, and they contacted him, and he agreed to participate in this short video with Harvey and kind of going back and forth, and it's pretty funny. It just involves the new secret for Twitter's double hashtags. So if you can do that, kind of engage who are people out there that you know that might be interested in sort of assisting their alma mater. And again, this is a way to become that engaged donor who had a great experience at your institution. May not be monetary, but maybe more powerful than the money they might be able to produce. Now, this is another thing that almost anyone can do, really resource constraint. If you don't have the people out there, you don't have like a manager of new social media or whatever other titles get associated with people that work in those areas. If you can't afford that, at the very minimum, what you should be doing is listening and monitoring. So lots of channels out there, but some simple things you can do of just having people look at either Facebook, what are people saying out there if you have a Facebook account or a page for your school. Google, are you signed up for Google Alerts? So we'll sign up for enrollment management, admissions, registrars. I do my own name, so if I ever see myself, Google will alert me on a daily, weekly, etc., whatever basis you choose, if your name or something pops up somewhere on the internet and you just want to see what people are saying about you. That way, I mean, just kind of monitor it. If you don't have the resources, you can see, are they seeing something negative? Is there any way we can go out there and kind of paint our side of the story and react quickly? Some of the numbers I just have on here, like Twitter, College Confidential, Instagram, just through Google Maps, iOS, Apple iOS Maps. You should go out there if you haven't, review your campus, and this will go towards campus tours, visitors, anybody engaging with your campus. Is the map of your campus correct? And I probably don't mean are the streets correct, etc., but sometimes the buildings will have a whole different name on them, or they'll have a little Panda Express Chinese restaurant right on the corner of your, and you're like, I don't see one out there. Or they had Oregon Hall here on our campus, was labeled as, I forget what the name of it was, but it was some kind of dance academy. And you just need to submit a thing to Google, like a service request ticket, and it'll usually take them a couple days, and they'll fix it. But that's a great thing to do, so people don't come here expecting they're going to get coffee on the corner, and there is no coffee shop there. Now, true yik yak on there, just because if anybody's seen the Chronicle lately, and kind of the little mini uproar on NASPA 2015 in New Orleans and their conference and some of the back channel yik yak chatter going on. And then they posted it on Twitter, and there's probably only a very small amount of people on there. And then I think they probably created a bit more of a problem by highlighting it and then seeing some of the things people are saying. But yik yak is just another anonymous, trying to think of some of the other secret whisper, those sorts of things where you can go out there and just anonymously post things and they'll get voted up or down. Yik yak's a little different because it's a 1.5 mile radius, sort of from where you are, so you can see things locally that are happening around you, but you can also jump out and peek at other conversations that are happening on different campuses. This is a good one to monitor, even if you're not going to be in there posting anything, but it's better than sticking your head in the sand. It's good to know what's happening out there. And some of the feedback we just got or watching when people had to register and just how disappointed, frustrated students are with kind of our scheduling experience and why aren't our tools better. We're in the midst of updating those now, but it's good to see that sort of feedback out there and what people are talking about. Especially if things get really bad, it's good to get out there and head those off. So where are teens on social? I'm going to skip through these pretty quick because I went back to looking at some charts I had from 2 years ago to see what some people were looking at posting, what some of the takes were and how those change. And that's probably the big takeaway here is Gary Tan did this, and his end size was only about 1,100, but Tumblr was big. So then you look at Tumblr and you're like, oh, well, here's a bunch of, this link actually goes out to higher ed sites. It was run by a person at Yale. It's not totally up to date, but had a lot of universities that are currently using Tumblr. But then you're looking at some of the moving forward to the spring of 2013, a bit later by Piper Jaffray, and people using Facebook, YouTube, how that sort of changed from the spring of 2012, which ones are decreasing, increasing. But as you get a little closer in time here, looking at spring 2014, and again, this is now closing up on a year ago, but you start to see the movement of decrease in Facebook, and this is really about what they consider most important social networking sites. But the decrease in use in Facebook, I will kind of make a caveat here that this means that they aren't using it all the time to communicate between themselves, but it is something that teens and other folks will maintain a Facebook account a lot because they want to keep connected to mom, dad, Aunt Frances, all the other people in their lives, but they want to do it on their terms. So you're going to see the growth in Instagram. One of the things they don't have on this are really looking at some of the other players that are out there that you know of, like Snapchat. And this graph will show this a little bit better, and this is from Niche. And this was recently used by Niche, and Chegg did a presentation a month and a half ago on looking at the vertical axis of percentage used daily and percentage have used. So then you get into YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, things like Pandora, iTunes, etc. I think are maybe not used so much as the platform piece for chat, etc., but they're utilized quite a bit. Some of the ones you'll see coming up and that aren't displayed on here, people could have comments like, you know, where's Reddit, where's Imgur, how about other things that I don't see on there like Wanalo for a big teens favorite. But Snapchat has definitely moved up the ladder quite a bit, and you see University of Dayton recently Snapchatting out all their admissions letters going out. And I'm not saying every single individual letter, but really starting to use that. Take a break from that just for a second, and I'm going to get back to some other channels and what things people are using on social media. Now, another example of striking with the iron was hot. It's kind of Gangnam style, with YouTube being the most actively used social media channel and absorbed in the frequency. The Gangnam Style was huge, and it still is out there. I think from last Friday till now, there were still 300,000 more hits on size Gangnam Style. And it's the clear leader in YouTube with 2.3 billion hits. And it's just mind-numbing, that's billion times it's been utilized and seen. So we had some students on campus do a parody of Gangnam Style, got permission to use the duck, and went out and worked the cheerleaders. This got a NACMA, the National Association of Collegiate Marketing Administrators, silver medal. It has 7.3 million hits. and they filmed it on an iPhone 4. So it really goes through sort of a parody using the Oregon Duck and going through Gangnam Style. And again, striking while the iron's hot, using talent you had on campus of students getting together and producing this, and now it's registered 7.3 million hits on this. But what it also spurred was kind of a viral rotation into Psy doing a review on Fuse of his 5 favorite Gangnam Style parodies. So then you had another 4 million people watch that on that channel. Okay. And also, I'm sure somebody or people out here are familiar with Harlem Shake and have probably seen, or maybe your campus had their take on doing their own version of Harlem Shake and parody. But you need to go out and watch Harvey's Pearls of Knowledge and his take on the Harlem Shake, and Nebraska's mascot doing that. Okay, that's all I'll say about that. Anyway, social landscape shifts. The big thing you can see is that year to year, month to month, you're going to see rapidly changing things on, I wouldn't plunk all your money down on the table and bet on certain channels that are just opening up now. It's rapidly changing. You're seeing broad to focused and discrete channels. So you're going to see people that are using particular channels like YouTube posting videos. They're going to use Vine for posting videos. They're going to use Snapchat for more of their ephemeral videos back and forth to people. They're going to use Wanalo for shopping. They're going to use all these things to fit each niche piece of how they want to communicate. So this is Choluteca Bridge in Honduras. You may have seen this. I've used this several years ago, and then went and looked on the web, and I've seen it used in many other places. The bridge was built in the 1930s. It was reinforced by a Japanese contracting company in 1998, and then soon after that, November 1998, Hurricane Mitch rolled through the Pacific coast of Honduras. Didn't wipe out the bridge, but it moved the entire river channel and destroyed the roads around it. So just be careful before you go too all in on a single thing, that this is rapidly changing. The channels will shift like this river shifted. And if you can build the most brilliantly constructed bridge and then your audience moves, you've got to be prepared to be flexible and move with them. So woo-woo, this is a great one. It's sort of illustrating that, hitting what's hot and how quickly things change. Adobe did this for some of their cloud businesses. Ask the right questions. So now Snapchat, number of users, and trying to keep up with how this changes from monthly active users, MAUs. Just the sheer numbers, 200 million for Instagram. The other thing to take a look at with Facebook trying to keep up with all these things is they're really dealing with this by plunking down mass amounts of cash. So Facebook will go through and buy Instagram, and Twitter will go out and acquire Vine, and now Twitter is kind of partnering with Periscope, and WhatsApp. Wanalo is Want Need Love, socially curated shopping, so about connects to 300,000 different shopping sites. Probably heavier female use, and at least in the stats I've seen. Kik is kind of growing, and these are kind of WhatsApp and Kik, Snapchat trying to become these platform areas like WeChat in China. Trying to encompass everything and trying to get people from the outset that we don't do our banking online and somewhere else, whatever, but to get new incoming people to feel like everything you do is going to be on our platform. And that's what they're engaging people with, shopping and everything through there. So kind of keep an eye on that in the years to come to see how that changes. Yik Yak, I put in here, Whisper, Imager, some of the other social channels. Meerkat, Periscope. These guys just, well, pardon the pun, popped up the last month or so, and this is like live video, so I don't know if anybody uses this or seen them or checked them out. You'll get pings from people on like, hey, right now, Mark McConaughey broadcasting live from the river, the banks of the Jordan River. And all of a sudden you could just like tap into it, and then you'll just all of a sudden be connected to Mark's iPhone or Mark's Samsung Galaxy while he's filming something in real time. So interesting concept. And Periscope is connected with Twitter, and that is just been put together by Kayvon Beckcooper and Aaron Wasserman. You might remember them if you've been aware of some of the work Tom Black did with them when they were at Terribly Clever Designs in Stanford. They developed iStanford and the Stanford mobile app, and then they were bought out and went to Blackboard and did the Blackboard mobile app. So now this is their new endeavor. Other social channels, Tinder. And then now Frenzy is kind of the Tinder for college students only, developed by a couple of Princeton guys. Teen Trends, looking at specific networks, and some of these have passed on here, but the pin boards on Pinterest, photos on Instagram, live streams on Vine, or now Meerkat or Periscope, using discrete channels to serve different purposes and being in multiple places. So Instagram, Piper Jaffray on last fall, Instagram, Twitter are the two most used social media sites, increasingly visual and soundbite communicators. So like Vine, what can you communicate on video in 6 seconds? Really moving through, you've got to be, I just saw an article on New York Times developing one-sentence stories for Apple Watch. So for the whole Apple Watch, iWatch kind of thing and those sort of platforms, and I think you used to call these things headlines, but it'll be like, Turkey gets extension from EU and whatever kind of headline thing you can think of, but it's that just snippet soundbite thing. We're all very busy. How can you absorb information quickly and in parts, in little chunks? Original Facebook. So Uversity was previously Integral. We use Uversity now. UC Santa Barbara had a good presentation of Pacro, and we bring in like incoming classes and try to recreate that initial intent of Facebook to have incoming classes not yet there. You're trying to reduce that melt during the summer and get them to matriculation by creating those communities, creating those ties that bind between your incoming people that have really almost there, and you want to just maintain that relationship with them. Path used to be a sort of a similar concept. It's kind of faded away in the U.S. a bit, and actually now it's shifted its marketing mostly to Indonesia, where they do have their largest user base of 4 million users. Migrate to UO is a personalized video. We're doing this in conjunction with Hobson's. We've produced 2 of these. And so what this does is it takes somebody's first name, last name, the state they're from, their zip code, and everywhere, there's several different places within the video that'll shift to using, say, their license plate, distance from where they live to where your institution is. We'll use their name in several different places. And this is another one here that I think Michael just posted that in chat if you want to check that out. And Mark was gracious enough to let me use his real name in there, so he'll be in there. Pros of Knowledge, Snow Days. I had this in kind of taking the presentation from Harvey Perlman's sort of take on U.S. News and World Report and getting a lot of complaints from students that he doesn't give enough snow days. And then he kind of goes on to say, well, it's a slippery slope, because then what happens? Students ask for, it's windy and I'm getting hit in the face, it's too windy day, and hit in the face with leaves, and the sun's out and it's too bright, the sun's hurting my eyes days. And then it just blows your U.S. News and World Report rankings. Okay, let's hit CRM. So CRM, looking at being smarter than you have been in the past, more effective, and trying to be more unified and cohesive. We're really all over the road sometimes, and people think of our institution as like, I'm going to call the University of Oregon. But there's, as you know, with a lot of your institutions, there's so many different departments, colleges, and pieces of that moving parts. So tons of silos, different areas, but how do you present that unified face in a cohesive fashion? Also, automating actionable intelligence. So you have a ton of data, again, and how can you set that up to be correct, to deliver that to the student and your interior audience at a school. It could be staff, faculty, could be other people, parents. And you want to deliver smarter things. And what you want to do is also look at having a centralized communications policy. You don't want to overwhelm people. And I know I was talking to Jem Tsunada at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and Jim Maraviglia there has done some great work with CRM stuff. And they're looking at also trying to rein in, how do you not overwhelm students? So you don't just let everybody and their brother text people. You don't let everyone and their brother just email everyone advertising their Romance Languages 211 course, because they're just going to tune out. And we're particularly aware of this, of making sure we space our communications out, and we don't overwhelm people, and we try to keep it brief and important. So in this one, we also want to make sure that things like texting, that doesn't get abused at all, because we want to keep these channels for any kind of emergency communications, that if you get something on this, You need to pay attention to it and look at it because it could be some sort of emergency communication. I can follow up on a lot of these later on or talk to somebody in person if you want some more information, but relevant communications, follow the old journalistic kind of who, what, when, where. Hopefully you have a why you're doing it. Opt-in, I'd love some of these. It would be more of not overwhelming people. We haven't done this, but I'd love to set up a cafeteria style sort of options on what kind of communications would you like to get as a student. Would you like to get when your grades are complete, so you're not calling your instructor and bothering them? Would you like to get if a course is canceled, if a class is moved, or get any kinds of these sorts of heads up on things? Predictive analytics. What happened? We're usually doing reports, dashboards, what is happening, real-time analytics, probably not as good at in higher ed, and what's likely, like predictive analytics and prescriptive. What do you, not just predictive, here's what we think is going to happen, but prescriptive, rather, is what are you going to do about it? And Tristan Denley, Austin P, did some great stuff with this and worked with the University of Memphis, Tennessee Valley Community College, and on Degree Compass, and I think they sold it spring 2013 to Desire to Learn. But they did some really good predictive analytics on grade prediction and courses. Only 0.5% of the world's data is analyzed. So I mean, there's a ton of data out there that's not really still analyzed, but it's just huge. And I say big data, getting back to that, is sort of a, if it's used, it's big data. If it's not being used, it's just a big pile of data. Our anticipating needs and concierge model, and that's where we're trying to work towards and looking at, is that where you want to be? So you can look, we're all in a very cyclical nature. Do you want to get to a point where we're looking at coming into February, this certain types of demographics and incoming students and parents contact us about these sorts of information? So we break those down into categories, types of information. Who are these people? Do they have particular things? Sort of looking at the target model. And now can we anticipate those coming back around again, look at those populations, and then do campaigns where we're sending those types of relevant information out to them. We're anticipating their needs, so hopefully they're getting things to look at, oh, how'd they know I wanted to know about that before I asked a question? And then we're saving ourselves inbound email, our staff working on phones, and they can start to do things that require more of their human attention, human judgment. Let's take a quick look at mobile. Part of when and where and how ties in the way users interact, time shift. That's why I think texting, things like that are so popular, is that you can get a text, you can look at it. You don't have to respond to it right away, but you can choose the time and place and how you choose to respond to that. Mobile dev, just looking at, if you have a chance to pull in and log events and capture information, you probably should be doing that, even if you haven't figured out how to use it yet. Some of the mobile usage things I can see, one of the things, we have a great GIS infographics department have done wonderful map app, award-winning, and what I'd like to do with working with them on would be tour classes scheduled. So if we have introduction or summer orientation programs, come in the first time you register for classes, to be able to mash that up into our map app to make a personalized, here's a tour of your 5 courses. And you can walk around if your parent or parents happen to be on campus or somebody's with you to see where all the buildings my courses are going to be in. And that way, they're saving time later on. They get to kind of share that experience with somebody that's here at orientation. One of the other things I think is pretty cool, the laundry app, of looking at what kind of data you have on campus and can you mash it up with something else to make a killer app. So University of Iowa did this with their mobile site. And they've got card swipe on their washers and dryers and residence halls. So they've put this on their mobile site so you can look at, for each residence hall, which washers and which dryers are used, are there any available, and how many minutes are remaining on one of those being used. So brilliant. If you got data like that, I mean, as an undergrad, I would have loved this. Like, look at the dryer, look at the washer, something's available, maybe not in my residence hall, but one next door to me has got 3 washers open, so I can haul all my stuff down there instead of just getting down there and having to sit. So you are mobile. This is MC10 in Boston, does a lot of wearable technology, wearable mobile stuff. I've got a call tomorrow with somebody from Hyperloco, and love to work with these guys on sort of a concept I'm thinking about with tours. So you could get something that would have to be relatively inexpensive, but maybe not a sticker somebody sticks on themselves like this. Could be a wristband or some other kind of token that they're wearing, but they could opt into it, and you describe it in something that you send them something in a letter saying, hey, when you're on campus, and then pairing this with our digital signage on campus to blend that in with somebody's on campus, and it's like, welcome, Mark. I see you're interested in anthropology. I'd love to, and here's a quick map of like where the anthropology department is if you want to go check it out. And so kind of imagine that if you could tie that into somebody else and helping personalize their on-campus experience. Gamification, just want to hit this real quick. Informed users, connecting users, acting information. So a lot of times the most powerful engaged users you can have are looking at things like leveraging motivation beyond the physical. So things like health tab, for instance, photography, clout, registering Facebook likes, people, registering how many times have people clicked my Snapchat photo and like that. A lot of teens and upcoming things will look at, they'll post something on Instagram if they don't have a certain amount of likes in a certain amount of time, that maybe it's not popular, don't want to have unpopular stuff on there, they'll pull it off of there. That's the kind of motivation, they're looking for likes. Health tap is kind of an interesting thing where you have a lot of very highly competitive, highly paid surgeons and medical professionals. They couldn't pay them to give this kind of advice and answer these sorts of questions. They couldn't afford it. But what they've done is tapped into their hyper-competitiveness, and they're just looking for who's like the best, who gives the best medical advice and everything, and they've kind of leveraged that competitive nature to leveraging Health Tap and engaging those sorts of professionals basically for free by getting the gratification that they're the most well-liked, desired, and ranked. Quick thing on privacy, looking at personal information from Pew Research Center. Just a quick thing of looking at teens, different age ranges, boys and girls, and how much of what types of information they post out on the internet. And it's kind of mind-blowing because we usually travel around the worlds of FERPA and HIPAA and all sorts of other personally identifiable information concerns, guarding that sort of the data and being the gatekeepers for that. Meanwhile, I think we're used to, you probably have sent admissions applications or admit letters out to people, and they're proudly taking a photo of them, Instagram, and posting it up there with their name and address and their probably user ID, et cetera, that might be at your institution. And they're totally oblivious to this concept until they get to some point in the future. Relationship status, city, towns, et cetera. So the long game, and I'm sorry if anybody wants to see this, this will be recorded and take a look at this. I'm just moving through in the kind of interest of time so we can get to some questions. The long game, what we're looking at is continuing that model of bringing those students to us. And one of the things that really concerns me and our enrollment management team of trying to be very good about is we can do a wonderful job sort of going out there, engaging people, personalizing things, but the big work is on both sides. But the big work is once they're on campus, how do you avoid that dissonance of that experience? If you have a fantastic experience, how do you continue that all the way through every phase of an incoming student or their parents or anything on campus, of every little piece of that, of making that a great experience and continuing that heightened expectation? Because especially with electronic stuff, how quickly they get responses from social media, larger companies, and they come to us and they have those same expectations for their experience and how they use your student information system interface. And we have a lot to live up to. So everything from fixing that crack in the sidewalk outside so someone's mother doesn't trip on it, or dad falls off the side of the curb and that's like horrible experience because you didn't fix the crack. All the great things we can do to bring somebody to our campus, we don't want to ruin it by not being able to meet the rest of their expectations once they're here. So quick review on some of the things we covered. We can get to some questions. So social media CRM, a lot of these things we can go way in depth on, but I just want to give you kind of a snapshot look at a lot of different things to think about that are out there. And after the questions, I have some others like Warren Buffett working, Harvey Perlman's, and a couple other videos that one of them will kind of point out will probably be the Central Institute of Technology in Australia probably has one of the, what should I say, the most interesting and boundary-pushing admissions recruiting videos I think I've ever seen. We can provide a link to that, but if we do, I'd have to say that you can't be for the easily offended or faint of heart. They actually engaged two of their students, again, alumni or people who have attended their institution, that it went on to be sort of comedians, pushing the boundaries on internet comedians, and they pulled them back in to do the It's a Snap video for their admissions recruiting and to show off their thing. So it includes things like, beer drinking and bleeped out sentences and some more graphic sort of things, but it's also gotten millions of hits too. So they're onto something there. But let's go ahead and open it up for questions. I'm sorry I've kind of went over impinging on some of the time, but there's just a ton of stuff in this space to talk about.
Thanks. I know that everyone out there in virtual acro land is standing on their feet and giving it up for you virtually, Jim. Thanks for the fine presentation. Hey, I invite everybody who's watching and has a question for Jim. You can see that the chat window is opened up, so please type your messages there. I do see a couple people are typing already. Hey, and the next thing is, Jim, you really talked about all kinds of technologies, practices, and other opportunities that we can bring to bear on campus for doing all kinds of things, whether that's recruitment, communication, or providing a better student experience once they arrive on campus. Which ones have you done on the Oregon campus? Which ones have you seen actually provide a positive ROI?
Yeah, Mark, that's I think the toughest thing, and people trying to nail down with any kind of social media or viral videos, of trying to say, any kind of data set. You have so much data points. How do you suss out that this one had an impact? And can you say, standalone, that was responsible for this percentage increase or this actual amount of increased enrollees? Or did that just merely offset something negative that happened too, that it would have been much worse if this didn't exist? Or was it due to other things you've done, like you've increased your majors and you've raised your academic profile? So that is the difficult thing, I think, on any kind of social media. They can say, just by the number of views, page hits, views, that sort of thing, that you're increasing, I guess you deem your brand awareness is out there and how many people are engaged with that. But man, it's really tough to attribute that standalone. Even things like Uversity, where people are engaged in sort of that community and building that and looking at how much did that decrease your melt, or the number of increase was related to that alone, because there are so many other factors. But a lot of this too, you're looking at, can you just get that out there? And maybe more people that just thought Oregon was someplace out in the woods in the Pacific Northwest, and the only thing they remember about that is they themselves or their parents talking about playing the Oregon Trail while they were in school or something. And other than that, they didn't even realize there were cities or universities out here.
Yeah, gotcha. A real quick follow-up to that. Have you, as you deployed some of these practices, did you think ahead of time about what metrics you might employ in order to evaluate their effectiveness?
We've had discussions about that, and again, we come back to, there are a lot of companies out there trying to, that will charge you a lot of money to look at those sorts of metrics and factors. And I'm not mentioning any of the companies explicitly, or probably not mentioning the metrics too, but beyond some of the things that page count, hits, etc., tying those things to like those actual users that viewed something. Some of those we do know we have more control over, things like the personalized videos that we send out to people, and some of our CRM and our campaigns and our open rates, and we do parse those out a lot on who went through a campaign, who made a different step, who actually sort of responded to one of our call to action within an email, personalized email, tailoring it to some of the interests and things you may have mentioned, either via some data from SAT, ACT, testing services, our own information we've gathered in request for information forms, tell me more cards at college fairs. Now, we do follow that quite a bit to see who returns those, how those have been effective, and who ends up matriculating.
Gotcha. In a very similar vein, Alan Thompson asks, have you been able to attribute any enrollment, I assume enrollment increases, to a viral video, for example?
Alan, I'd have to probably say no. But I don't think we've had anything I could directly attribute that to beyond just the expansion of just general brand awareness.
Okay, and Jim, another question from Betty Huff, and actually one that you and I kind of talked about right before we went on the air, which is, so again, all kinds of possibilities, but you happen to be from a very large school full of, I'm sure you don't feel this way, but full of resources, things that you can leverage in order to accomplish some of these things. How would I do that at a smaller institution?
Let's say the thing I sort of mentioned during the presentation, biggest ones I'd hit are social media, or just, if you've got anybody has any capacity, set up something like Google Alerts, I mean, at a minimum, to look for key things that are out there that are being talked about your school. What can you go out and have somebody just once in a while just jump on Yik Yak, or see what are people in a 1.5 mile radius at your institution, what are your students talking about? So at least monitor what's happening out there, even if you don't have the capacity to go out and create that social media presence where you're curating it and engaging. And if you can't do all that, because you can't just let it lie fallow once you start it, at least be aware of what's happening out there. Now the other one, if you're looking at video creation, things like that, is there a club on campus? We all have very smart students that are driven and have done amazing things. And the best thing about something like content, if you have somebody go out there and create something like a video or work with you to do that, they can produce something really great, and that's a standalone piece of content, which is fantastic, because unlike maybe somebody you engage to help work with your student information system and a piece of software, is once they go away, who's going to maintain that or update that web page? You don't have to worry about that, because once that video is created, it's created, and nobody has to come maintain it.
Okay, I think we're nearing the end of the hour. We have about 1 minute left. If anyone has an additional question, please pop it in as quickly as possible. Let me say one more time, thanks to Mr. Jim Bouse, University of Oregon. Thanks for an excellent presentation. I know that everyone out there is virtually clapping just as hard as they can. Before letting you go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, let me do a couple of quick commercials. First of all, in about a month, the 2015 ACRO Annual Conference will be held at the Baltimore Convention Center here, or not here, but in Baltimore, Maryland. That's April 12th through the 15th, 2015. And the most excellent Mr. Jim Bouse will also be doing this very session there if you want to see him in person. In addition, the 2015 ACRO Technology and Transfer Conference will be held July 12th through 14th, 2015. I know that Mr. Jim Bouse will be in Austin, Texas this coming July, and again, it's another opportunity to see him there. If you really want to concentrate on things associated with technology and the tools of the trade as they are used in admissions and registrar activities, technology and transfer is the place to be. I'm looking, I don't see any other questions, so
Hey,
I also want to say one special, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was just going to say, if anyone's there that wants to follow up in more detail on any particular section or things that we sort of did an overview on, please feel free to email me, call me, contact me, or whatever, and we can get into.
Gotcha.
Just more depth
And a
things.
very special thanks to our technical supreme coordinator, Mr. Michael Sassoon of ACRO, who's done an excellent job. So without further ado, we'll see you, and so long from Eugene, Oregon, Bloomington, Indiana, and from Washington, D.C. Goodbye.